So I need this as low as possible. I spoke at a conference in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago, and the podium was taller than me. So I had to use a baby stool that they use for like the third graders to see when they read the prayer intentions at school mass. And I had to use that so that I could see everybody. So I'm so glad that this is working. Oh, thank you so much. The first thing I want to do is thank every single one of you for being here, specifically about this topic in particular. Homosexuality, as I'm sure many of you know, is not talked about nearly as much as it needs to be. So the fact that all of you are here, even just to hear me talk about my own personal experiences with it, makes me really happy. And Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers has been mentoring me for 6 years, and he's one of the most incredible men that I know. So the fact that any of you would be skipping his talk to come to mine is mind-boggling to me. So I had half of mine to skip my own just so I can see him. So thank you all for coming on those 2 counts. So I left something in my bag. I want to read you all something that I actually wrote in my journal a couple of days ago. Thank you so much. I came very unprepared. This is something that I wrote in my journal a couple of days ago when I was actually preparing for this talk. I just want to kind of give you a little bit of insight into what I was thinking. It says, "To the world and to those of it, I'm gay, and it seems as if that's all I can be. And with that label comes a whole host of expectations. It comes with not only how I think of myself, but also how I look at other people, how I dress, how I act, my political views, who I associate myself with and who I don't associate myself with. To the world, that's what I am, and that's all I can be without intentionally deluding myself or not living my truth. So this is how the world looks at me and others like me. Because I experience same-sex attractions, I am gay. And that's just about it. Now, with that, again, comes so much expectation and really how I view the world. The first being specifically how I view myself. So in this title, I am gay, it pinpoints a sexual attraction. So because my same-sex attractions or others like me are pinpointed to persons of the same sex, the community or the world tries to kind of plaster that all over my entire identity, as if that is what I am. Like I'm saying, I am gay. Like this is kind of almost the only important thing about me. And this is kind of an all-encompassing thing. I don't know if you guys have these kinds of things, but back in Mobile, Alabama, where I'm from, downtown, there's this like little bookshelf thing, or you'll find them like around the city, and you can pick up books and place books in the bookshelf, and people can just take and read and bring things back. It's a nifty little thing. But I remember seeing in one of those bookshelves a book on gay dog walking, as if there's a different way to walk your dog if you have same-sex attractions. It was very confusing to me, but it's not something that was not a singular occurrence. It seems to be, especially the way that the LGBT community portrays gayness, or whatever you want to call it, it's all-encompassing. It kind of protrudes almost over your entire life. And you have to, from the time from the way that you walk your dog, or the way that you see the world or other people, is through this gay lens. So, it's no wonder then that so many of us, or especially, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but come election time, whenever you are political or liberal or conservative or liberal, anybody that is on the opposing side is your enemy to a lot of people. If you are conservative, then you are against me. We have nothing in common. I don't know if you see some of these polarizing things, especially on Facebook. I want to deactivate my Facebook the minute 2020 comes about because I don't want to see anything having to do with this. But it's a polarizing thing when we only look at ourselves through that particular lens. It becomes all that we can see. So it's harmful, really, to look at yourself through such a narrow viewpoint. My entire, or a lot of my high school experience was kind of overshadowed by my experience of same-sex attractions. So when I was a junior in high school, I had a best friend who I found myself to be what I thought madly in love with. She was what I thought about in the morning. She was what I thought about when I went to bed at night. I didn't feel like my day was complete unless I had talked to her. And it became just one of those things. And I really didn't know how to talk about that to other people because even in my high school, now I went to Catholic school from pre-K all the way through 12th grade. And I didn't hear homosexuality talked about once. So you can imagine how ostracized it made me feel to not know how to go about my daily life with this experience. I had seemingly no one to talk to. I had nobody telling me church teaching. I had no one telling me that I was okay. I had none of that. I felt miserable, more misery than I thought I could experience as a teenager, a 16-year-old, and to have to suffer like that so young and not have anybody to talk to was absolutely miserable for me. The second way that I think looking at yourself kind of through that narrow lens or looking at a person through such a narrow lens is that you begin to also look at God that way. I got angry really quickly. And I kind of suppressed that because a lot of people just pegged me as the happy-go-lucky, social butterfly kid in high school, who they really didn't understand was hiding this deep and intense secret. I don't even know how to express what I was feeling or the sorrow that I was experiencing, but I took a lot of that out on God. I kept thinking, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Honestly, I didn't think I had done anything that bad. I thought I was a pretty good kid up to that point. I put my pennies in the donation jar when it came around and felt super special because I didn't have anything else to put in. What did I do? What did I do to deserve this? And I remember going into adoration one day at my high school, looking at the monstrance and saying, why? Why have you done this to me? Why would you allow me to carry this cross when you knew it was going to bury me face down in the dirt? Why would you let me carry such a cross? Why would you put such a cross on my back? And I kind of remember in the silence of my heart hearing very clearly, wow, that sounds really familiar. God has experienced that hurt, that sorrow, and experienced it infinitely more than me. But the difference between him and me is he saw it with the right perspective. I took my glasses off. I don't know if any of you noticed that, but I can't see any of your faces. I think my eyesight is maybe 0.125, something like that. It's terrible. But I can't see any of you. At the same time, when I was looking at myself as gay or wanted to look at myself in that way, I looked at myself with a very blurred sense, or through a very blurred lens. Just like you all right now, I couldn't really see the purpose of what I was suffering with. But the minute I put my glasses on, hey, there's people in here. The minute I put my glasses on, everything gets put into perspective. The same way that the minute that we start looking at ourselves with a God's eye view, everything gets put into perspective. I know myself now not to be gay or lesbian or bisexual or whatever you want to call me. I am a beloved daughter of God. My God is king, which makes me his princess. I'm royalty, which is actually why I wear this flower crown as a symbol to myself that I am indeed royalty. I am indeed his daughter. And that is not something that anybody or anything, including myself on my worst days, can take away from me. My identity comes from a place where I really can't do anything about it. No matter how much I sin, even no matter how much good I do, my identity doesn't change. My value, my worth does not change. I am still and will always be a beloved daughter of God because he created me in his image and in his likeness. He placed me in this place at this time, in this body, with this name, in this experience to love me exactly as and where I am. My identity really has nothing to do with what I've done or who people say that I am, but whose I am. I belong to God as his creation, and he's the most magnificent artist that there ever was and that ever will be. And that's where my identity comes from. The reason that I reject labels like gay or even straight is because you're looking at yourself, or we're looking at ourselves with a blurred view. We're not focused on what's truly there or what's really there. Looking at ourselves through the lens of attraction only leaves you with a whole other entire picture that you're missing. If you were only to look at the bottom left-hand corner of this image on the screen, you wouldn't know you really wouldn't know much about it. But you pull back and you look at the whole screen and you look at the whole picture. It says Thirst Conference 2019. Now you know the purpose of this. If we only look at ourselves through that minute lens where we can't see the entire human person, you've lost it. Now, in my experience, one of the things that really crippled me was paying too much attention to emotion specifically. I think because I felt a certain way that I thought that was kind of all that mattered. Our emotions tend to get us in trouble a lot of times because they're really not based in logic or reality even times. If I'm in my mind, just kind of going through and saying, oh my gosh, I'm gay, or oh my gosh, I'm thinking in this way, I'm not really paying attention to reality. I'm not paying attention to the reality that I am a daughter of the Most High. I'm not paying attention to, especially when emotions rise or emotions get heightened, that is my true identity. I think a lot of you too might have been coming here because you know somebody or you love somebody that might be struggling with this. And I'm going to open it up to Q&A in a little while. And I tend to try and leave more room for Q&A with adults because y'all have the good questions and y'all don't hold back. I talked to the teens earlier today, and they are the most frightening demographic to speak to because they kind of build up these kind of walls, and they tell you exactly how they feel about you on their face. Like if they can't stand you, I was in high school a couple years ago. I remember this. It's all up here. You know, you can tell if you're not resonating with them. If you love somebody who's going through this, know that even though it's kind of cliche, they're loved by God too. God redeemed them also, and he gave his life for them too. He wants holiness for them. One of the things that I think we miss oftentimes, especially when we're struggling, is the goodness of God. God would not withhold anything that we need for our salvation. He didn't even withhold his own blood. He didn't withhold his own life from us. He gave us everything. And that was a free gift that has already been given. All we have to do now is accept it. All we have to do now is accept this gift. The way that we encounter people, or the way that we can walk with people in this experience, or who are experiencing same-sex attractions, oftentimes is just being there. Just being there. Y'all can talk about the weather, or talk about sports, or talk about whatever either person is interested in. Oftentimes, people just want to talk. One beautiful example that I've witnessed in my own life was one of my friends, right when I had started out my ministry a couple of years ago, had invited me over to her house to spend the night, but also to talk to her brother, who identified himself as gay and who was living an active gay lifestyle. And she was a convert to the faith, so none of her family was Catholic, and none of her family, I think, was very religious. But she asked me to come and speak to her brother. Her brother, I think, actually blessed me more than I blessed him in that moment. And really all that we did was have a conversation. All that we did was we talked. He told me about his experiences. He told me about the way that he had grown up, the way that his homosexual attractions affected him, the reasons why he wanted to act on them. And again, the experience differs for a lot of people. I myself didn't recognize my same-sex attractions, or possibly they didn't even manifest until I was a teenager. He, on the other hand, I don't think could remember a time when he wasn't attracted to the same sex. The experience differs for so many different people. And really, if you think about it, the experience of life differs for every single one of us in this room or at this conference. It differs for all of us. We won't know what the other person is going through unless we open up the bridge for conversation. We start talking to people. We start listening. And listen in order to understand, not to respond. If we're just constantly church says this, or the scripture says this. Here's the thing. I know that you guys know your faith, and they probably do too. But what they need, especially in that initial encounter, in that first moment, is to know that you love them enough to shut up and listen. I think that's a lot of times what a lot of people are looking for. We all have this innate desire to be seen, to be known, and to be loved. We all have it. So we all have to recognize that, not only in ourselves, but in other people, because that's going to shift the way that we start engaging people. And by the way, this goes for really any and everything. I do tend to speak most about homosexual attractions or homosexuality, but I think many of the points that I share go for any and everything. We are all on a journey. We are all suffering to some capacity, and we all need each other in this battle. One of the main things that I suffered from was silence, particularly silence in the church. Again, I didn't hear a lot about homosexuality at all. So when I started experiencing it for myself, I had nowhere to go. I felt like I had nowhere to go. Us in the church, we might be the only people that get to open up our hearts and have people come in and listen, and have people come in so we can listen to them and care for them. And the church needs to be that place. And we, as little churches, need to be that place for other people. My entire life, I don't think I really understood not only who I am, but how I'm supposed to deal with the world around me, no matter what I was suffering from. And same-sex attractions, having same-sex attractions did not help. I saw myself through a very narrow lens, and it was often covered by a lot of soot and grime and dirt. And I found myself really just despising not only myself, but God. And it was only when I was able to clean that lens off, when I was able to look at myself through a God's eye view, that I really began to understand not only myself, but God, and just how good He is. I have to believe that this cross that I'm carrying means something, that this cross that I'm carrying is going to be used for some good. James 1:17 says that God is the giver of every good gift. So what is the gift in this? What is the gift? For one, I'm here. I get to minister to people all across the country. Like I just said, I was just in San Antonio, Texas. I'm here now. I'm going to Chicago next month. I'll be in New York, California next year. Getting to minister to people, especially spark the conversation, especially because not too many people are doing so, especially not too many people my age are doing so, is a beautiful vocation in itself. We're all called to something. Now, when I look at myself, I remember when I looked at myself when I was younger, I couldn't stand looking at myself in the mirror. I think I would literally, after showering, would dry off in my room so that I wouldn't have to pass my huge mirror and look at myself. Now I go in, I put on my little crown, and I say, she's cute. She's good. She's good. And that has nothing to do with what I've done or being up here or how I might have fallen in the past or how I might fall in the future. That has everything to do with who God is and who He made me. And He made me to love me as if I was the only one to love. And I love that about Him. We're very finite beings, not only in our bodies, but in our capacities to love. And He can't be outdone. He cannot be outdone in generosity, in love. I'll just keep this out just in case something says. That's really tough. Yeah, I've never been asked anything like that. But my knee-jerk response, too, is just keep that invitation going and making sure. I don't know if any of you went to Deacon Harold's session just now, but one of the things that he said was like prayer and fasting. So I don't know how close you are to this family, but we tend to really understate just how powerful prayer and fasting is. So making sure that is a intention for you, not only to keep the action going of keeping the invitation open and keep inviting the person back, but your prayer specifically, like as a friend, Lord, I want to bring my friend so-and-so to your open heart right now. Your heart was pierced for this person. Help me to convey the love that you have for this person. Like a simple prayer like that. I've never been asked that before. That's powerful. Thank you for asking that. I don't know if I helped at all, but
my question has to do with the confusion in the church on this very topic. I'm from North Carolina, and in the church I attend in Chapel Hill, it's very different. About 2/3 of the people in the parish actually support homosexual marriage. And the priests don't talk about it. And when I first joined the church, I was warned by people who knew my conservative position, do not go to spiritual direction to anybody in this parish because all the spiritual directors are fans of James Martin. And so part of what I see is, and I'm wondering, is this a problem in your ministry that you encounter fellow Catholics who say, wait a minute, this whole teaching is in flux, it's in transition. James Martin met the Pope last week, and so there's a whole potential. How do you have this conversation? In fact, And I spoke to one of the spiritual directors I met in Diocese, a very pleasant woman. She was adamant that, your sexual attraction is part of who you are. You can't separate them. You can't, quote, condemn somebody to a life of celibacy. That's unchristian, it's unloving, it's a judgment. But all those words that Harold, the mentor, talked about. So I'm curious as to how much of that confusion you've encountered as you speak on this topic, and for those of us who may be, again, uncertain as to how to have this conversation, how do you support the church's teaching when it's under attack from within?
In my own in-person ministry, I would say, I haven't encountered it a lot, but I'm sure it's coming. So I actually did so I'm from Mobile, Alabama, but I did a speaking engagement at a parish in Fairhope, Alabama, which is maybe an hour away. I have a ton of friends who live over there. And I gave a talk to the youth group one night, and they came back the next night to speak at the parish. The youth minister, the day of my parish talk, called me and said, "Hey, just kind of want to give you a little bit of an update on the situation. Apparently, the priest got into a bit of a screaming match with the parishioner because the parishioner did not want me there, talking about homosexuality. So one of the things I believe he said is, why can't they just go away? Like talking about the gays or whatever. Like, why can't they just go away? Why can't we just stop talking about it? And that kind of thing. Here's the problem with that. We've seen the detriment that is in our church right now caused by silence, either silence or people directly defying church teaching. So you mentioned Father Martin. I asked him actually last week, a friend of mine, if y'all know who Patrick Coffin is. He used to be the host of Catholic Answers Live. He has his own show now. He invited Father James Martin to a debate or discussion with me, and Father James Martin has said nothing. So the tweet has been liked over 1,000 times, have been shared several hundred times, and he will not respond. And it kind of raises a lot of questions, like, why not? Just to give a little bit of my background, I dropped out of college twice. The best Catholic education I had is a high school diploma from a Catholic school, so he should not be threatened by me if what he teaches is accurate. But here's the thing, it's not. So anybody who's is any bit familiar with him, I caution you to be wary, because he has not only said but supported a lot of heretical statements, and I wouldn't say that his positions are to be trusted. Now, how to have this conversation, first of all, be firm in your Catholic beliefs. You don't have anything to be ashamed of, because again, the Catholic Church professes all that is good, all that is true, and all that is beautiful. So even though, yes, the church teaching on homosexuality is a bit hard to swallow, it's the truth. And the truth has set me and plenty of other people free. So you are not to be ashamed. You are not to, just kind of cower away. If anything, people who oppose it should be, and probably are, the true cowards, because they have shied away from the truth and are now trying to force that on other people. So those of you who uphold church teaching, you have nothing to be ashamed or fearful of. To have these just blatant conversations, I'm not really quite sure of how to go about it, especially because a lot of it is so confrontational in nature.
So, suppose somebody says, "Hey, you're a bigot."
So suppose somebody says, "Hey, you're a bigot." Walk away. Honestly, walk away from the conversation. These words are basically glorified name calling, bigot, homophobe, whatever. It's glorified name calling. It is them calling you names because they don't have an argument, so they have to shut you down some kind of way. That means that they probably have no interest in a dialogue, and that you shouldn't waste your time. By the way, the term homophobic literally means fear of things that are the same. If you look at the actual wording, homo meaning same, and phobic meaning the fear of. So that's a really useless word and that people just throw out to shut down arguments. So walk away. Don't give them the time for that. Anybody else?
Well, let me just, can you hear me?
You want Don't be shy.
So, what do you say to a young man who tells you you don't love him unless you accept who he is? And of course, he means gay. I have had some relatives that I've been cornered by. And, my response is, I love you no less. We're all wounded. We all have desires, and we know from Christ that we need, if we want to keep our sanity, we need to follow him and carry our crosses. So heterosexual, homosexual, we have to have self-control. I don't know what else to say. What would you say?
Specifically for that, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, I think the LGBTQ community has done an exceptional job of making our stance seem like it's combative in a sense, almost that we are attacking their very essence. Because again, if you look at yourself as gay, if somebody comes in and questions that, they're questioning your identity. They're questioning who you are, which we know not to be the case, but unfortunately they don't. And a lot of those times, unfortunately, you kind of just have to sit back and wait for the rug to fall up from under, to be dragged up from under. Which I know, especially talking to a room full of parents or family members, is upsetting to hear. But there are some times when you have to let go and let God. Now, if the conversation, or if the method of conversation, or he stays in relationship with you, again, simply those conversations, you just listening to experience or to the person's experiences would be, I think, really helpful. At least then, you would build the foundation of trust with the person. And then I think when your views come up, at least you'll have a background of, well, she talked to me before about this, or she listened to me, so she must love me in some way. But again, a lot of times you might have to wait until the rug comes up from under people. But I will say, I'm a part of a ministry called Courage, which if any of you haven't heard of it, it's been around in 2020, we'll celebrate 40 years. It was founded by Father John Harvey, and it's a ministry that offers pastoral care in the community to people with same-sex attractions, who experience same-sex attractions. So another branch of Courage is called Encourage, which is for family members or friends who love someone who experiences same-sex attractions. The Encourage parents specifically are my absolute heroes. Because a lot of them, and you'll hear this from a lot of their testimonies, where their children have completely cut them off because of their beliefs in the Catholic Church. And that happens sometimes. But at the end of the day, when they come back wanting something, Deacon Harold mentioned the parable of the prodigal son. When they come back, when they realize they've been missing something and they want something real, you might be, as a person who stuck to church teaching, you might be the only one that stayed true. So when the rug gets pulled up from under them, when the world comes crashing down, when they hit the bottom of the barrel, they will have a place and a person to come to. And you might be the only one that is still there for them. What was it that changed my heart? My priest, my parish chaplain at my high school, I went into his office one day, I think it was my senior year, And I still hadn't really talked to anybody about this. But I went into his office on the verge of crying, and I told him, Father Dan, I think I'm gay and I don't know what to do. And he looked at me very intently, and he just says, you are so good. And he repeats this to me like time and time again. He kind of makes me repeat it to myself. But that was the first time that somebody had looked at me as something other than what I had done. He looked at me, again, from that God's eye view. When I was writing this talk, I was thinking about him the whole time, because he saw me for what I actually was, not for what the world saw of me. And it took me, I think, a couple of years to really realize just how powerful of a statement that was. But it was a powerful statement, and it stuck with me to this day. And like I said, he could have very well just said, well, he could have watered down church teaching. He could have said, well, you don't actually have to believe that to remain Catholic, and the church is going to eventually change its stance. He didn't say that. In our future meetings, he made sure to tell me, what the church taught, and he made sure to tell me the truth. And that took a lot of bravery on his part, knowing very well that I could have turned my back. So he was a huge reason that I'm here today and that I stayed in the Catholic Church, and that I think about myself the way that he did. So his name is Father Dan. One of my dear friends, when I told her this story, she said, you just needed somebody good in your life to remind you of how good you are, which is kind of a play on words because his name is Father Daniel Good. So he's one of my favorite people to this day. He's one of the reasons I stayed. I don't know what time you guys have to get out of here either. I think it might be 4:30.
I just wanted to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. I really think our church needs a saint. I think there are a lot of people. So when people are struggling, they can look at the saint and say, okay, that person struggled just like I did, and this is how they got where they are. And just the reality of, as humans, we can't really touch, if we have a loved one who is struggling, or if we're struggling, human interaction is so very limited, but prayer is immense. And so for a lot of my life, I just continue to rely on prayer. And Lord, I know you want this more than I want this, and I trust that you'll provide. My brother is homosexual, and the Lord showed me he wants him to be a priest. Showed me very clearly. So we've been praying for a few years now. As soon as the Lord showed me, I came home and I told my family, and they all thought it was nuts. Sometimes they still think I'm nuts. My husband and my children. But we really are still praying, and we're offering sacrifices because we really believe what the Lord says is true. But I think if my brother had a saint to follow, that sure would be a whole lot easier for him. So thank you for continuing to do what you're doing, guiding other people.
I'm no saint, but I can only hope. There's one quote from St. John of the Cross that I think works for any and everything, where he says, one obtains from God all that one hopes from him. So I hope your brother finds that saint. And there are several people, I know several people who could very well be that saint. I'm not wishing their speedy death or anything, but I would sure love to have somebody in heaven praying for us in this way. I am no saint, but I can only hope. Maria Goretti, you said? Saint Maria Goretti is a beautiful one, just talking about chastity. Saint Aloysius Gonzaga, I think, is another one that struggled a lot with, temptation to chastity. So he would be another beautiful one. I have on my rosary, I like to carry this one with me. This is a papal Swiss Guard gunmetal rosary that I got. Because I like to feel like a soldier. I'm a very Joan of Arc-esque kind of person. But under the cross, I have St. Mary Magdalene, who's another good one. So. I have no idea what time it is, so I could just be wasting all of your time. I have 15 minutes? Okay, I can also let you go early if you would like to leave. But any more questions? Like I said, I'll be here until tomorrow, and I'm speaking tomorrow morning at 10:15 as well. It's a completely different talk. It's kind of the adult version of the one I gave to the kids earlier today, going over church teaching on homosexuality as somebody who actually has to abide by them. So if you would like to come to that, please join me.
Where is it?
I think tomorrow morning mine is upstairs. I think in one of the prairie rooms, right upstairs where the kids' conference is going on right now.
What
So
time?
I think I'll be up.
What time?
10:15 tomorrow morning. I'm pretty sure. It says in the schedule. Have I got a scalpel? I do. But mine is about to break, so thank you so much.
Anyway, I'm just curious. I got a granddaughter who's into this. She's going to the dark side. She's getting all kinds of tattoos. Mary Potter, funk soul. How deep does this loneliness go? If you could reemphasize that. Right.
I'm praying for her as well, and anybody else who has somebody that they love. If you want to come up to me and tell me their names, I'll be sure to lift them up very intentionally in prayer. And thank you for asking. The loneliness experienced by really all of us, but I think especially people with same-sex attractions, the best word that I can describe it is pervasive, where it affects kind of almost every part of your being almost, or every part of your experience, where it was crippling at me at times, where there was times where I would literally lay in my bed and stare at the ceiling for hours every day because I felt like I couldn't get up. You know, I felt like I could not make it to the next moment. And it was a crippling experience. But loneliness is a gift. And I know some of you are saying, well, if loneliness is a gift, I like to return it. I've felt that as well. But in that, I think specifically in loneliness, feeling like you need someone, which a lot of times is felt by people in the LGBTQ community. A lot of times they're just like, I want someone. I need someone. It's true, we all do. But that person that we need more than anyone else is Christ. And the only time that loneliness is ever going to be satisfied in any of us is in heaven. That's what heaven is for. Heaven is the end of our loneliness, of our suffering, of all of it. It is peace, it is joy, it is complete and total union with God, our Maker. And He designed us. He designed us to want Him, to desire Him. St. Augustine put it so beautifully when he said, "My heart is restless till it rests in me." And we can find some rest on earth through the sacramental grace, through Eucharistic adoration is a huge one, in each other, in holy and chaste friendships. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But ultimately, we have to get to heaven for that desire to be fulfilled. And it's what, I think you said your granddaughter or niece, it's what she wants. She desires heaven even if she doesn't know it. And you, I think as someone who loves her, have a very unique opportunity to offer prayers and sacrifices and penances for her. Because even if, in this life, she doesn't come to know Christ, she can. I think in the Diary of St. Faustina, Christ said that He encounters the soul 3 times before the final judgment. So your prayers could very well, if she doesn't recognize it in this life, could be what kind of breaks whatever the hold is over her eyes so that she can see Christ, even if it's the end of the end. So she can still be saved. Anybody that you love in this room, any of you who have loved one, they can be saved, whether in this world or in the next. They can be saved. Don't give up hope on that, because Christ hasn't given up hope on them. So you shouldn't. So none of us should either. So prayers, fasting, penances, all of that can work wonders. It can work miracles. Even Christ said, they will work greater miracles than these. And working miracles of hopefully transforming hearts through the power of Christ, through the power of the Holy Spirit, can absolutely help. I think a lot of times miracles may not happen just because Christ has no one to perform them. So he has no hands, no feet but ours. So how many graces, how many miracles, how many healings aren't occurring because we're not asking Christ to be the ones that he works through. So you especially ask Christ for that specific grace, that your prayers might help heal the people that you love in your life. You've got awesome hair, dude. Love it.
How do you respond to people who view abstinence or chastity as a punishment instead of a gift?
I chuckle, honestly. It tickles me pink. There's one guy who persistently attacks me on Twitter. He doesn't follow me, but he finds my tweets all the time and just berates and harasses me. And I honestly find it very comical, where he says, like, you believe that all gay people are called to celibacy. And I said, all people are called to chastity. Yes, those aren't the same thing. All people are called to chastity. Not everybody is called to celibacy. My immediate thought is, there have been a lot of religious sisters walking around here. All of them are chaste and all of them are celibate. And they are some of the most joyful women I have ever encountered in my entire life. Beautiful. I was discerning being a consecrated virgin for a while. In the way that I read a book called And You Are Christ's by Father Thomas Cadet, where he talked about consecrated virgins specifically, where he said that consecrated virgins are called from the Psalms to gaze on the beauty of the Lord, and to let the Lord ravish them in a way that married couples just can't experience, because they have things to do around the house and they have children, so they can't just go into ecstasy at any given moment, just experiencing the beauty and the profound nature of God. So a lot of times God does call certain people, just saying, let me ravish you. Let me reveal myself to you in a way that I just can't do with a lot of other people. It is a higher calling, I think, than marriage is. That doesn't mean that everybody's called to it. So just because it is a higher calling doesn't mean that it is for everyone. But it is a absolutely beautiful vocation for men or for women, to be celibate and to sacrifice that part of our lives in order that we can focus more intently on coming to know God, coming to experience Him, in a way that is profound in nature, is really divine, I think, in nature, that, not everybody is called to. But the people who are called, those fair few, those beautiful few that are called to that, I'm jealous, honestly.
I just have a quick question that last question made me think of. So I am from Fargo, and I have a friend actually who, throughout her high school and early college years, she lived an active, she was falling away. Oh wait, no, she wasn't Catholic. Her parents were Christian. but she lived an active lesbian lifestyle. She hung out with that crowd. That's what she did. She fell in with a Catholic friend because she lived that lifestyle, but she also was pro-life. And so an event brought them together and they had discussions. Anyway, long story short, she ended up becoming Catholic and would give talks about her own struggle with the homosexual cross, but also how she found freedom in the Catholic Church. She's now married and has a little girl. And so I guess that kind of boggles my mind because it's like, wait, what? Because, yeah, she's married to a man. No, and so now she goes around and she tells that story about how her whole view of marriage completely changed because of her whole view of what her sexuality was and how it was a gift from God, and like things like that. What do you have to say about that? And what do you have to say about
Praise God. Like, that's awesome. I think it can be a rarer occurrence. But even in my Courage apostolate, so the Catholics who experience same-sex attractions, there are married men and women in the Courage apostolate. So it is not completely uncommon to see that. So just because a person experiences, especially like predominant same-sex attractions, God can still call one of us to marriage. So I think that especially the culture around us places way too much emphasis on pleasure and on good times than what marriage is. The best way that I have heard marital intercourse, sex described, is I believe in the theology of the body, where it says, and now I'm blanking, where it says, the marital act is the repetition of the marriage vows in the language of the body. So if a person is willing to say, I give my all to you, in sickness and in health, for better, for worse, I would hope that the person would want to say that in the language of their body. Because the body, again, speaks its own language. Like if I was up here frowning and just being really upset and looking really miserable, you probably wouldn't believe much of the things that have come out of my mouth. But if I'm up here smiling, being joyful, you'd be more inclined to believe that I actually am joyful, that I actually do appreciate church teaching and love church teaching. So I say never say never. God can call, anyone, to any vocation. I know Father Donald Calloway talks about how he was hunted by the Japanese mafia, I think, at one point, and is now one of the most prominent priests that speaks on the rosary. His book, I think, is in the bookshelf, the 26 Champions of the Rosary or something like that. He's a profound, and has been a priest for a while. So God can call anyone out of anywhere to anything. He called the Savior of the world out of Nazareth, out of a stable, of animal feeding trough, out of a possibly 13-year-old virgin in, a backwoods town. So he can do really anything and everything. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Also, Jackie Hill Perry has written a book called Gay Girl, Good God. She's not Catholic, but she talks about living an active lesbian lifestyle and then reverting to Christianity, and talks a little bit about her story. And so I don't think that book would be out there, but I believe it's on Amazon, and you can find it at a local bookstore or something like that. But her testimony, I think, is fascinating as well. She's also mentioned in the documentary The Heart of Man, if any of you have seen it. It's not on Netflix anymore. I don't know where it is now, but her testimony is powerful as well. I love that. I think I'm called to marriage, actually. So I'd love to be married. Thank you. Anybody else? I know some people are leaving, so that means that there's probably not very much time left. But again, I'll be at my booth and I'll be walking around, so feel free to stop me at any time. And God bless you all. Thank you so much for coming.